Harry Genoa stepped out of the psychiatric ward carrying nothing but a thin paper bag and a kind of exhaustion that clung to him like damp clothing. For 6 days his phone had been taken away, and with it the noise. No buzzing, no ringing, no reminders of what his life had quietly become. The quiet had been enforced, sterile and uncomfortable, but it had also been merciful. The moment his phone was returned, that mercy disappeared. The screen lit up, once, then again. Text messages stacked on top of missed calls. Notifications layered over accusations. It felt less like communication and more like a dam breaking. His in-laws had been busy, very busy. Questions about unpaid bills, physical therapy invoices, reminders disguised as concern. Their words carried urgency, but not the kind reserved for a man's health. This urgency was different, sharp, impatient. It was the urgency of interrupted income. As Harry scrolled, something inside him finally settled into clarity. Not anger, not shock, just understanding. They hadn't been worried about him, they had been worried about the money. For 8 months, Harry had been holding his life together with fraying thread. 8 months since the accident, 8 months since Sara, his wife of 6 years, had woken from a 4-day coma, unable or unwilling to remember him. She remembered Tuscany. She remembered mutual friends. She remembered her parents, her brother, the home she grew up in. But Harry had vanished. The doctors called it trauma-induced amnesia. Her family accepted it without question. And Harry tried to endure it. After Sara was discharged, she didn't return to their home. She returned to her parents' house instead. Not long after, she asked for a divorce. Not out of anger, not betrayal, but because, she said gently, Harry was a stranger, and still Harry paid. Rent, utilities, therapy sessions, bills that arrived with relentless precision, all while his wife refused to be in the same space as him, all while his own mental health quietly unraveled, thread by thread, until it finally collapsed under the weight. Wendy Aguirre, the friend who had introduced Harry and Sara, was the only thread tying him to what remained of his former life, the only one who spoke to him like a person instead of a resource. And now, standing outside the hospital, his phone buzzing in his hand, Harry realized something he could no longer ignore. He could not keep financing a life that rejected his existence. The thought came quietly, uninvited, sharp, and impossible to ignore. What if it was all an act? Harry hated himself for thinking it. For months he had defended Sara, to friends, to doctors, and most of all to himself. Trauma does strange things, they said. Memory is unpredictable, they said. And Harry had believed them. He had needed to believe them. But the pattern would not leave him alone. Sara remembered vacations. She remembered Tuscany, the warm streets, the late dinners, the shared laughter over wine. She remembered their mutual friends. She remembered names, faces, inside jokes. She remembered her parents, her brother, the home she grew up in. She remembered her favorite shows, her grocery lists, her daily routines. The only thing missing was him. If she wanted to leave, why not just say so? Why choose disappearance over honesty? Why erase a person instead of ending a marriage? Harry would have understood. It would have hurt, but it would have been clean, a conversation, a decision, an ending. Instead, she had chosen a vanishing act, a disappearance so complete it left no one to argue with. Amnesia made everything easier. No confrontation, no explanations, no guilt. And sympathy came automatically, concern, soft voices, understanding nods, while Harry stood on the outside, watching his own life continue without him. He imagined her telling the story, the careful pauses, the trembling voice, the well-timed sighs, how she would say she simply couldn't remember her husband, how tragic it sounded, how believable. And all the while, Harry was paying for therapy sessions he was not allowed to attend, paying for recovery he was not allowed to witness, paying for a marriage that no longer acknowledged his existence. Perhaps, he thought bitterly, she was afraid of the paperwork. Divorce required memory, clarity, decisions, and maybe remembering Harry came with inconvenient emotions. So it was easier to keep him forgotten, to declare him a stranger, to erase him quietly. And her family, eager and unquestioning, helped maintain the illusion, all while ensuring the money never stopped flowing. That was the part Harry could no longer ignore. This was not just forgetfulness, this was erasure. When Harry finally arrived home, something felt wrong. Not loudly wrong, not immediately alarming, just wrong. The driveway was empty, the space where his car should have been sat open and quiet. It took a moment to register. After everything else, it almost felt insignificant. Almost. I left it here, Harry said softly, more to himself than to Mike. Keys on the table. Mike stood beside him, hands in his pockets, searching for an answer. Maybe your in-laws know, he offered gently. The words landed heavily. The idea of calling them made Harry's stomach turn, but necessity outweighed pride. He scrolled, paused, then tapped Eleanor Gray's name. She answered almost immediately. Harry, where have you been? The concern came quickly. Too quickly. I was hospitalized, Harry said, cutting in before the questions could bloom. Have you seen my car? A pause, then casually. Oh, Jim Jr. took it. Just like that, no apology, no hesitation, no sense that anything unusual had happened. She explained the door was unlocked. The keys were on the table. He assumed it was fine, as if Harry's absence had turned his belongings into community property. Jim Jr., 36 years old, still drifting, still borrowing, still returning things damaged. Harry pictured the car, fast food wrappers, the smell of cheap beer, new dents he would eventually have to explain. The audacity of it all was almost impressive. Almost. I'll come get it, Harry said evenly. I work tomorrow. Mike drove. The house came into view, large and polished, a monument to comfort and certainty. As they pulled into the driveway, Harry felt himself brace. This place had once felt like family. Now it felt like a courtroom. Eleanor and Jim Sr. met him at the door. Eleanor offered a side hug. It was brief, cool. Are you okay, Harry? Jim Sr.'s voice followed immediately. What happened to you? They ushered him inside. The house smelled of lemon polish and unspoken accusations. Harry explained. The panic attack, the mental ward, the staff who thought he might hurt himself. Eleanor fluttered, water he didn't want, concern that never quite reached her eyes. Jim Sr. sat back, silent, judging. You look fine, Eleanor said at last. And there it was, the measure of worth, how well he appeared to function. Concern for Sara followed immediately, not for him, never for him. For a moment the room went still, the air felt heavier, as if it had settled on Harry's chest. He stood there, hands loose at his sides, waiting for something, concern, reassurance, anything, but it never came. Eleanor cleared her throat. I am sorry to say this, Harry, she began, her voice carefully arranged. Harry felt his shoulders tense. He braced himself for another bill, another expense, another obligation disguised as concern. She actually went on a coffee date. The words landed slowly, not sharp, not loud, just heavy. Harry blinked, once, then again, as if his mind needed time to accept what it had just heard. Jim Sr. nodded. She deserves this, he said. The sentence echoed, she deserves this. Harry felt something inside him loosen, not anger, not shock, but the quiet unraveling of something he had been holding together for far too long. He wanted to ask questions, demand explanations, remind them of vows, of paperwork, of the fact that he was still her husband. But years of appeasement had trained him well, so he stayed quiet. The silence did the talking for them. In that silence, a single word formed in his mind: divorce, not as a threat, not as revenge, but as relief. In Maryland, the law offered something merciful: 6 months of separation, no endless proving, no dramatic courtroom performances, just time. He had already lived those months, alone, paying, waiting, no children. The thought brought an unexpected wave of gratitude. At least no small lives were tangled in this quiet collapse. The image followed him home. Sara, dressed nicely, sipping coffee across from a stranger, smiling, while Harry sat alone, still considered too unstable to see her. When Jim Jr. was still asleep, Harry retrieved his car. No confrontation, no drama. Just keys returned without ceremony. Back home, the silence was overwhelming. Surrounded by takeout menus and 8 months of exhaustion, Harry cried. Not loudly, not theatrically, just enough to let the truth settle. Then he opened his laptop and typed the words he had been avoiding. Cheap divorce attorneys. The decision once made did not feel dramatic, it felt inevitable. Harry met the attorney on a quiet afternoon. No raised voices, no theatrical sympathy, just facts, 6 months of separation, a clean path forward. The attorney listened, then nodded. She had seen this before. The selective forgetting, the financial dependency, the quiet erasure of a partner. For the first time in months, Harry felt believed. The paperwork moved slowly, but it moved. When the divorce papers reached the Grey household, they landed without ceremony. No outrage, no frantic calls, no sudden concern. Jim Jr. complained, quietly, mostly to himself. Eleanor attempted mediation, carefully, politely. Sara shrugged, as if the marriage had been a minor inconvenience. That, more than anything else, told Harry everything he needed to know. He learned something important: that presence, no matter how loyal, can still be made invisible, that endurance is not the same as love, and that when someone chooses absence, the only answer left is acceptance. When left, begone. The phrase stayed with him, not as bitterness, not as regret, but as permission.